humility is one of the most important qualities which you must have. Because if you are humble, if you make people realize that you are no threat to them, then people will embrace you.
Welcome to the Fidelis Leadership Podcast, a place of learning for those who aspire to leadership excellence. Here's our host, Mike Etor.
Our guest today is Roben Graziadei, an award-winning executive, highly successful motivational speaker and management consultant and trainer. She has over 20 years of experience with higher education and Fortune 500 leadership, during which she has trained over 500,000 people from the mailroom to the boardroom and delivered over 50 million in learning and development services. Her expertise has consistently enabled her clients to significantly increase employee engagement, customer satisfaction, and sales revenue results. She has a true passion for empowering both individuals and businesses to achieve their personal best. She has written a new book, Instinctology, in an effort to inspire others to make a difference. And we're going to talk about that book today. And Roben believes this book will make a difference in people's lives and a world around them. So, Roben, we've been trying to do this for a few months and postponed it because my medical situation and all that. I appreciate your patience and all that. I've been stalking you on social media. Clearly, you're the real deal. So, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me. I've been really looking forward to meeting you and to this day. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, and you're very welcome. Well, listen, obviously I was reading the intro because I didn't want to screw it up, but it's very brief. So tell us a little bit more. The readers want to know a little bit more about Roben. What more can you tell them?
Well, I share a little bit more about both my personal and professional background. People often ask me, how did I end up in a career like this? And I always like to say that it really was a lot of hard work, and also I attribute my success to being lucky enough to have really great leaders who mentored me, like Josh Covey, Hiram Smith, Stephen Covey, Tom Peters, Barry Posner, wonderful vice president of sales at Pearson, her name Mary Jo Kovac, wonderful career counselor, woman named Neela Cantlaberry. And over the years, just these individuals just saw in me what I didn't see in me, and they helped to bring it out, and they helped to guide and direct my career, where I ended up getting to live my mission, which is to make a positive difference in people's lives. So I just want to say that it takes a village to sometimes have a great career, and I'm very grateful that I've had the opportunity to make a difference in people's lives and have been mentored by some very, very well-respected leaders with good hearts. Also, I like to always mention my dad, who was a colonel in the Air Force and a pilot. And when I was young, he was teaching me to fly. I got my pilot's license before I got my driver's license. And he would say to me when we were in the cockpit, he'd say, "Close your eyes and fly the plane." I'm like, "No." And he'd say, "Do it." Of course, he was there and his eyes were open. And he told me, he said, "You have got excellent intuition, Roben. You intuitively know how to feel this plane." And then he would always, compliment me and build me up as his daughter. He'd watch me and he'd say, "You've got great intuition when it comes to business, Roben." And he just always helped bring to my attention that I had this gift of intuition, which we really all have. We all have, but we haven't all been lucky enough to have somebody nurture it in us. So I always like to share that because I like to give credit to the people who helped me nurture this gift of intuition and bring it out. And I really like to help bring it out in others, because if you get my book and read it, and I'm not trying to make a shameless plug, but there's story upon story upon story of real life examples of when I trusted my intuition and there were just great and amazing outcomes. So I'm grateful to have had this career. I've had the opportunity to work with some excellent leaders in corporate America. While I worked with Tom Peters, the author of the book In Search of Excellence, our clients were Silicon Valley and the San Francisco Bay Area, all the way up to Seattle. So early on in my career, I was being mentored by Tom, and we just had great clients, C-suite clients of companies today that have big, big names that were startups back then.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit of my background. And then what I'd like to say is bringing it forward, Mike, to today. People ask me all the time about how does intuitive intelligence impact artificial intelligence. So I want to really speed it forward to today. I think now more than ever, learning to practice intuitive intelligence is of a paramount importance to all of us because we are inundated with artificial intelligence, fake news. Artificial intelligence is based on data that somebody typed into an algorithm. So we don't know where the data came from. We don't know the mindset of the person who wrote the data. We know nothing about that. And you know the old saying in technology, garbage in, garbage out. I'm not saying artificial intelligence is bad, and I'm not saying that using data is bad. I'm simply saying that we as human beings have been given a gift by our creator of intuition. And let's use that now more than ever when we're inundated with all of this potential fake data and AI data that we don't even know where it came from and what it is. It's just really important for us to tune into our intuition.
Yeah, I love that. I agree with that entirely. I see the stuff that's going out today in the news, and I don't care what anybody's political views are. I challenge people to find any source that isn't at least partially influenced by the owner of the company or the board members or the whatever. And then, of course, some of them on both sides of the political spectrum, in my view, my discernment, have been totally compromised. So if you're operating without intuition and gut feeling and just basic common judgment, well, you're going to go down a rabbit hole that's going to lead you to some place based on entirely false information in some cases. So you're preaching to the choir on that one. Well, listen, I always like to clear up right from at the start of these podcasts, so the audience, now they know a lot more about you. We need to know more about your business. So what is your current business? What do you actually do, Roben? What problems do you help clients with? What do you help them solve?
I am recently retired from my full-blown career. While I was in that career, I did leadership consulting with the C-suite of Fortune 500 companies and academic institutions. And the problems that I helped them solve were the problems with leadership acumen, and also sales and marketing. I wrote the sales training that FranklinCovey sold many, many, many years ago. FranklinCovey became FranklinCovey. I've trained over 500,000 salespeople and consultant with the leadership team of Fortune 500 companies on sales and marketing communications, and also their leadership acumen. So the problems that I help them solve are the problems where a CEO, for example, has a really strong sense that she or he ought to take the company in this direction, or ought to focus their marketing communications in this way and for their target market. But they have the board members or the C-suite team telling them, well, our data says this and our data says that, and we think you should do this and we think you should do that. So the problems that I helped my clients solve when I was full-blown in my career, now I do this type of consulting with small businesses in the community that I live in, helping small businesses to grow. But what I help people do is really become very, very, very crystal clear on what is their mission, what is their vision, what are their core values for their company, and how do we then turn that into sales and marketing communications that drive revenues. It's really important that a person does listen to their intuition and not just data, because we've seen, especially recently, organizations that listen to data from one person's point of view. Bud Light is a perfect recent example. And they got way off base with their target market. Well, the grandson of the founder of that company said, I want to bring us back to ground zero, back to our foundation, and start targeting again our target market and not going off of data that misled them. So fortunately, this one individual was able to see that and course correct for that company. And that's what I help people do. I help people course correct when they start to get to veer from their vision, veer from their mission, veer from what their target market is and marketing goals are, unless there's a complete revision, renewing of the company. I help them course correct and really put together, first of all, be clear on their values, missions, and vision, and then put together sales and marketing communications that are spot on for that mission, that vision, those values, and their target market.
Yeah.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah, very rich answer. Thank you so much. It's intriguing. Well, one of the questions I asked up front also, Roben, is I ask everybody, if we were on an elevator and I found out, oh my God, you're Roben Graziadei. Oh my God, I'm a fan of yours. And we were only going to be in an elevator. I'm going to get off before you. So we got about 45 seconds, of a trip on the elevator, maybe less. And I said, this may be the only chance I ever get to talk to you, Roben. Can you share with me what your philosophy of leadership is? What would you tell me? What would you answer?
I'd say the best leaders are leaders that get out of their own way, come from humility, truly practice a servant's heart, and a lot of people give lip service to that, but sincerely be a servant leader.
Yeah.
Be very, very, very clear on your vision, your mission, your values. Don't let anyone talk you out of that, because that's who you are, and that's the core of what your company is.
Yeah, excellent. Well, the classic question, I ask this of every guest, and I'm always surprised by some of the answers, frankly. The timeless question: leaders, born or made?
Both. Leaders are both born and made. We all know of leaders that were natural born leaders. The one that comes to mind for me always is Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
He was a natural born leader. He was clear on his passion. He knew his vision. And when he got up to give that speech, that famous speech, he actually threw the notes away and said what came from his heart, because it lined up with the core of who he was as a natural born leader and his passion for what we now call DEI, but that back then was just his passion for all people being created equal. Right, and he just from his core said, I have a dream. And everyone knows how it goes on from there. So he was crystal clear, just like we've been talking about here. And I think that I've worked with a lot of leaders, or I should say they've worked with me, they've mentored me, and they've been great to me. And I've then had the opportunity to turn around and mentor others. The one theme that I see through the strongest leaders I've known is that they know what we keep going back to this thing. They know what their mission is. They know what their vision is. They know what their values are. And they walk their talk. They are congruent with that. If that's what they say they are, that's what they are. And some people might not like them, but if they're not liking them, they're not liking who they really are. As opposed to a lot of people today that want to present as a leader, but we don't even know what they stand for. There's different words that come out. They talk out of both sides of their mouths. They're not clear about their mission, their vision, and their values. And therefore, it waters down their ability to really lead effectively.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I tell you, I think, don't hold me to the number, but I think you're going to be episode 120 or so.
Uh-huh.
And I've asked this question now then 120 times, and your answer might be the best I've ever received on this.
Oh, thank you.
I was just sitting there thinking, I'm glad I'm recording this because I'm going to go snatch that. So good on you. I agree with everything you said. Well, listen, let's get into your book. I want to talk about this. I think it's a fascinating topic. I've scouted you out and seen some other interviews that you've done. So your book is titled Instinctology, a leadership method to turn gut instincts into concrete action. And you trademarked the term, I believe Instinctology. Yeah. So the obvious question, why did you write this book, Roben, and what audience is it aimed at?
That's a great question, and thank you for asking it. When I first sat down to write Instinctology, my sole purpose for writing it was for my target audience of leadership in Fortune 500 to Fortune 1000 companies and academia, because those were my clients. And I always had fun asking my clients this question: what's the one thing you wish you had done differently in your career as a CEO, CFO, COO, VP of sales, as a leader? What's the one thing that you wish you would have done differently? And this theme emerged where leaders would talk to me about, boy, I'll never forget the time that my intuition told me to do something and I didn't do it. And boy, did that cost me. And they would tell me stories that related specifically to their business, that resulted in things like high turnover, low profits, poor customer service ratings. And they would say, if I had only done what my gut was telling me, but I didn't. I caved to the influence of others. And then on the flip side of that coin, I have had leaders who've told me story upon story upon story where they said their gut instinct was so strong, it was just screaming at them. And they followed it, and the greatest outcomes came from there. Sales revenue outcomes, lowering employee turnover outcomes, better team involvement outcomes, tangible, realistic outcomes that came from them, a leader acting on their strong intuitive prompting. Albert Einstein says that intuition is the highest form of intelligence. And Steve Jobs was known for talking about intuition. I worked with the FranklinCovey company for a while, and they have a book and a course called The 4 Disciplines of Execution. And in that book, they talk about how Steve Jobs, I don't know if they talk about this in the book, but they talk about it in the training and consulting. Steve Jobs would have 10,000 ideas that were presented to him in a year. And he would boil it down to one idea that they would execute on. The 4 disciplines of execution is boiling down all these ideas to 1 to 3, what they called wildly important goals. And he would say that the deciding factor for which product to develop ultimately was his gut instinct. And he talks about that. Well, he talked about that trusting your intuition, he'd say, was more important than almost anything else to him when it came to making major decisions. So I wrote the book because I initially was writing the book because I saw a gap in all of the leadership training material that's out there. There's hundreds of books on leadership. You have 6 of them yourself, Mike, which is very impressive. But there's hundreds of books on leadership. There's not one single book other than this one, and I'm not trying to do a shameless plug, I'm just answering your question, that talks about the importance of trusting your intuition as a leader and how to do that. So I wanted to help leaders do that more and more for more effective outcomes and greater outcomes, greater return on their investment. And I call that return on your intuition. So giving ROI new meaning, it is a return on your investment, but it's a return on your intuition.
Yeah.
So that's where I initially wrote the book. In the process of writing the book, Mike, this is on a personal note here, I got pneumonia and was hospitalized for 10 days in the ICU and nearly died. The doctors and nurses had the priest come in, and he read me my final rites, and I could see the fear in the doctors and nurses' eyes when I was laying in this hospital bed. And I looked at them and I said, "Don't worry, it's going to be okay." And I closed my eyes and I just thought, I've got to live, because I've got the son I'm taking care of, my godson, and I've got to live. So somehow, miraculously, in the middle of the night, it turned around and I did live. So then when I sat down to write the book, I ended up I was on disability for a year. And so I thought, okay, this was initially supposed to be a solid business book, but instead I ended up telling my stories in the book so I could leave a legacy for my godson and my family, because I was on disability for a year and I nearly died. So it turned out to be a book where I'm talking about the value of intuition, but telling more of my stories. My next book, I will be telling other people's stories. I will be telling the stories of community leaders, family leaders, nonprofit leaders, Fortune 500 companies. I will tell their stories of when they trusted their intuition. But since I didn't know if I was going to live or not, I decided to turn the book into something that would be a legacy for my family. So when you read it, the principles are there and the stories are there, but I want to focus the next book specifically on people in leadership roles, and that's being a parent, a school teacher, a doctor, a nurse, a firefighter, a police officer. It doesn't mean you have to be the leader of a company or a big public speaker, or it's any role you're in where you really are making tough leadership decisions. And I want to tell those people's stories and the difference that was made in the lives of the people around them when they trusted their intuition.
Yes, outstanding. Well, we're going to go deeper into the book, but I think it's prudent if I ask you've already spoken a good bit about instinctology, and I think people are starting to get the drift of what it is, but I'm sure you have a formal, or at least a better focused definition. So if I would ask, I am asking you, what is your definition of instinctology, Roben?
It's very simple, and thank you for clarifying this. Instinctology is the practice of listening to and acting on your intuition.
Boy, if it was only that easy,
It actually is pretty easy. I have an acronym that I teach to help people do it. It takes discipline, but it's actually pretty easy. Remember when emotional intelligence came out about 20 years ago?
Yeah.
People were overwhelmed by it. They thought, emotional intelligence, what's that? I can never do that. What is it anyway? I don't even know what it is. Well, intuitive intelligence is like that. We all have it. It seems a little scary because it's a new concept and a new idea. But the truth is it's very easy to start practicing intuitive intelligence when we discipline ourselves to do so. And we move from, perhaps we're doing it unconsciously competently, right? Maybe we're unconsciously competent about intuition. We make decisions and act on our intuition a million times a day, but we might be unconscious of it. It's unconscious competence. So my work is helping people move that into conscious competence, where they're purposefully and intentionally acting on their intuitive intelligence in big and little ways throughout their lives.
Yeah, excellent. I love that answer, and I'm sure the audience is appreciative of it. Well, listen, back to the book. I plan on getting the book. I have seen great reviews of it and snippets of it, and I've seen some interviews, as I mentioned earlier. If you had to boil it down, and I know this isn't easy. People ask me about my books, and it's not easy to do. I had to practice it for a while. What, in your mind, are the major concepts, topics, issues, questions that the book is focused on?
There's two parts that I will bring out more in the next book, but there are two things. Number one is it does answer the question, or we address the question. I don't know that it answers for everyone fully the question. We address why don't people listen to their intuition? And I talk about that in the book, and there are 4 or 5 main reasons why. One, we're simply not trained to do that. We live in a fast-paced, materialistic culture where we're just on the rat race of life, and we just don't slow down long enough or pause long enough to listen to our intuition. We've just been not trained to do it. 2, we are afraid that if we trust our intuition, it's not going to work out. And I would say that the more that you trust and act on your intuition, the more you're going to see it does work out. I've never in my life heard anyone tell me that when they trusted their intuition, they had a bad outcome. I've heard many stories, hundreds of stories of people telling me that they trusted their intuition and ignored it and had a bad outcome. So it addresses why do we do that? And that's one part of the book. And the other part of the book is I tell stories of a couple of historical figures who trusted their intuition and my stories, but I use an acronym to highlight how to practice intuitive intelligence. May I go into that now, Mike?
Yes, absolutely. Please do.
Okay. So the acronym is the word ACT, A-C-T. In order to really emphasize those 3 letters, A-C-T, I'm going to tell a very brief story that is in my book. And this is a story about, I'm going to keep it brief. If you want to know more, you can get the book and read the fuller story. I was coming off of a 5-day conference in Denver, where I had been a speaker. You know, it was a big deal. It was an honor to be there. And it was 5 days and 300,000 people. So I'm leaving the conference, walking across the street to get to my car. Noisy street, you know, horns honking, people passing by, a lot of pot smoking because it was Denver. You could smell it in the air, a lot of distractions. And there was a whisper of intuition came to me on the inside. It's not an audible voice I hear on the outside. A whisper came to me, and it said, "Get on the first flight to Kansas City tomorrow morning." I thought, what? That's crazy. See, your intuition doesn't always make logical sense. It's just this deep wisdom, or as Albert Einstein says, our highest form of intelligence. Well, I had been practicing Instinctology long enough to know that even if I didn't understand it, and even if I thought it was crazy, don't let my head talk me out of listening to it and acting on it. So I teach the acronym ACT, the letter A. I stepped off to the side, pulled up my phone, and texted myself a message, flight to Kansas City. Drove home. When I got home, I committed to getting on the phone and booking the flight. The letter C in the word ACT, you commit to taking a course of action on your intuitive nudge. So I did that. And then the next morning, I got up at dark 100, went to the airport to catch the first flight to Kansas City. I had a driver I always used, and I was telling him the story. He goes, "Well, I'd love to hear what's going to happen. You're getting on a flight to Kansas City." I did have clients there, so I thought I might be going there on business. As I arrived at the airport, an intuitive nudge said, "Check your bag curbside." I never check my bag curbside. I travel way too much. I always do a carry-on bag. But I checked it curbside that day. It's the first time, probably in 20 years, I checked my bag curbside. And the baggage claim handler said, I spelled my name, and he says to me, "Oh, Miss Graziadei, your husband's on this flight." And I said, "Well, that's going to be impossible because we've been divorced about 20 years. And he said, "Well, there's a man named Mike Graziadei on this flight. Do you know him?" I said, "Well, he's either my ex-husband or my ex-husband-in-law or father-in-law." And so I said, "Okay, all right." So I run to the ladies' room, put makeup on because it was like 5:30 in the morning and I had no makeup on. I think, well, am I really going to run into Mike, who I haven't seen in 20 years? And sure enough, I did. And I walked up to him and said, "Are you Mike?" We hadn't seen one another in a while, so I didn't totally recognize him, and he didn't totally recognize me. And I said, "Mike, is that you?" And he looked up and he says to me, "Well, you look really familiar. Where do I know you from?" I said, "Well, Mike, we were married once." And our jaws dropped. We get on the plane. The plane ends up being delayed. We sat on the tarmac for like 4 or 5 hours. Then for some reason, they flew us to Minneapolis and then to Kansas City. We ended up on the plane 8 hours together. Wow. And we talked through all of the things we had never really had closure on around our divorce. We asked forgiveness of each other. We hugged each other. We cried. And the flight attendants came by when he went to the lavatory and they said, "What is going on?" I said, "Well, this is my ex-husband. I haven't seen him in 20 years. They're like, "Wow." So they all were joking, "Well, this is the Love airline." And I said, "Well, my intuition told me to get on the first flight to Kansas City. I had no idea why." These are the kinds of miraculous outcomes that happen. It's almost a spiritual thing. If I had listened to the logic in my head and let myself talk myself out of, "Well, that's not logical. That doesn't make any sense, Robin. That's stupid. You've been at a conference for 5 days. Why are you going to get up at 5 a.m. now and 4 a.m. actually and get on a flight to Kansas City? And well, I guess I'll find a client when I'm there. I'll turn it into a business call." But so this is a real life story of the acronym ACT. I acknowledged the intuitive nudge. I anchored it in by making a note of it on my text message to myself, drove home, didn't understand it, but took a step of faith, committed to action, got on the airplane, ran into my ex-husband. We had finally, after 20 years, had closure. And now we're friends. The letter T in the word ACT is when you have an intuitive intelligence story like this, or an intuitive success story, tell it to other people. It builds your intuitive intelligence muscle. It builds your confidence in trusting your intuition, and it encourages other people to do the same. So the two things that the book addresses are, how do you do it? And this acronym ACT. And the biggest part is it takes discipline to act on the acronym ACT. The other part is, why do we not do it? And I hope the book helps people between those two areas being addressed to more and more and more practice intuitive intelligence.
Yeah, that's, well, thank you for that. That's an amazing story. I read it when I first found you and all of that. And then, of course, it's no comparison to hearing it firsthand from you. An amazing story. So thank you for that. And thank you for the high points of the book and the ACT, acronym and all of that for guidance. I want to ask you, the book addresses how a leader can know the difference between intelligently following instincts and building a bridge and not. Any advice for leaders, how they can tap into this and do it, things to do, things to avoid not doing?
Well, the one thing to do is stop questioning your intuition. See, when we get an intuitive nudge, our logical brain, we're trained in Western culture to be very logical. Our logical brain immediately goes into analyzing, and then we move into analysis paralysis, trying to talk ourselves into or out of an intuitive nudge. So the one advice I would give is just act on it. Trust it. Give it a chance. And over time, you'll see more and more that your intuition is the highest form of intelligence. That's what Albert Einstein said. And so even though we live in a culture that is all about, not all about, but focuses a lot on logical thinking and data, I think that intuition, practicing intuitive intelligence, is actually a strong component of critical thinking. because when you use critical thinking, you really sort through a problem you're solving, and you come up with an outcome that hopefully produces good results. So I think that practicing intuitive intelligence is actually a good component of critical thinking. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah. No, it absolutely does. And I wanted to ask you, you obviously you got such a rich background in coaching, and I am a coach as well. I'm going to ask you a question. Did in the process of researching and capturing all this stuff, and a lot of it was already in your brain, you'd already done this well, mastered it, if I may say so myself. Did it affect or influence the way that you coach clients? Has it affected your delivery, your bedside manner, so to speak?
Yes. And when you had shared that question with me ahead of time, I thought that was a beautiful question. And I really appreciate you asking it, because what I realized, Mike, is it hasn't only helped me in my coaching, it has helped me in all of my relationships. My relationships with family, friends, volunteer work, my clients. It's helped me with all of my relationships, because now when we are practicing intuitive intelligence, we become better listeners. So now I'm a lot quieter and I listen. We're in an interview now, so I'm talking a lot. But if we were one-on-one in coaching, or just one-on-one, a girlfriend or a guy friend or a family member over coffee talking, and you're sharing with me a problem you have or your story or something you're going through, I am a much better listener than I used to be, because I'm listening truly for what the person is saying and not trying to figure out how to solve the problem or having an answer before they're even done saying it. It's a really advanced level of active listening. So as I'm listening to that person, I'm also calm enough now to really listen to the intuitive nudges I get while they're talking. So I'll give you a brief example. I won't share any details, but I had a coaching session with someone this very morning. And this person was struggling with what they were trying to say and struggling to figure out how they were really feeling. And I just was quiet and listening to them, and also waiting to see if any intuitive nudge came up in me. And it did. And so I asked them, do you mind if I share an intuitive nudge that I'm receiving right now about what you're sharing? I always ask, do you mind if I share? And the person said yes. So I said to that person, this is what my intuition's telling me right now. Does this resonate with you? Does this fit for you? I ask it like that. I never impose it on someone. And the person went from having a slumped body language, a confused look in their eyes, tears in their eyes, to sitting up straight, their head up, smiling, a glow on their skin. And they said, that's exactly what I'm trying to say. That's exactly how I feel. How did you know that? And I'm getting goosebumps right now, Mike. I don't know it. I really don't know it. All I know is that God has given us this amazing gift, our Creator. He's given us gut instincts. And I say the gut, G-U-T, that acronym is God's utmost truth. He's given us this great gift. Animals have it. Porcupine's quill goes up to let them know they're in danger. But a porcupine, an animal, doesn't have the ability to logically start talking themselves out of it. They just know, my quills are up, I'm in danger. But we, as human beings, have a brain. So when our intuitions speak to us, we start talking ourselves out of it. So I said to this person, it just was something I felt in my gut, in my intuitive spirit. And the person said, yes. And then he just sat up straight. And I said, now that we've gotten here for our upcoming sessions, because we've had this breakthrough today, we can now focus our upcoming sessions on setting the goals you want to achieve and putting together the action plan or business plan that you want to achieve. We can start strategically planning for goals you want to achieve, but we couldn't do that unless we had this breakthrough first. And we've had it here in our very first session. So it didn't take, like a psychoanalyst, 2 years. It wasn't Freudian therapy that could take 8 years. It was one session where a person had a huge breakthrough. And now we can already start, we need to noodle that around a little more and really help this person become solid with what's true for them. But if we probably say 6 or 7 or 8 sessions by listening to, in my case, in this case, my intuition that did turn out to fit for him. So in the counseling, we can go deeper, faster, and then we can start moving into taking a look at the changes in your life or your business you want to make in order to be more effective or to be more fulfilled or more satisfied or to make more of a difference or to increase your sales activity or increase your profits. When I coach salespeople, I wrote the sales training Franklin Quest sold many years ago. I've taught hundreds of thousands, maybe 500,000 people in sales training. When I coach salespeople right now, I coach them, listen to your intuition when you're with a client, even when you're planning your day, because it's going to guide you, and you're going to save a lot of time and have more effective outcomes and be more productive faster. So I think I probably said more than you wanted to hear with your question, but I hope that answers your question at a deep level.
It answers it well and at a deep level. And I would say your experience has dovetailed with mine. I tell people, I had a very successful career in the Marine Corps as a leader, and then, 15 years C-level executive in a publicly traded company. So by most people's definitions, I was a good leader. Mm-hmm. I tell people as good as I think I was, and people were telling me that I was, there was one skill that I learned late, and I wish I would have learned it much earlier, and that was the skill of listening. Mm-hmm. Just really listening, mm-hmm. because I am a type A. I'm ready to go. Let's go. Mm-hmm. And, I was that guy. I would listen, knowing what the answer was going to be. I'd be polite and all that, but I knew what I was going to say. I was listening for him to stop talking so I could say something. Right. Yeah. And I worked for a very seasoned executive. You talk about the Coveys and Peters and all that, how this guy really influenced me. And he had the ability to sit and let me talk for 45 minutes during our one-on-one. Mm-hmm. And then he'd say, okay, if I heard you correctly, Mike, mm-hmm. early on you said this. And I was mm-hmm. like, wow, I admire that skill. So mm-hmm. I love, about, how you're learning to listen allows you to tap into your intuition and gut mm-hmm. feeling. So that was a great lesson and a good segue into what I have to add, if it's worth anything. I love it. And I want to, our time is coming close to a close here. First of all, you have a very rich leadership experience in your own right, and a very rich experience coaching and observing and, being with leaders of all types, all seniorities, all industries and professions. I'd like to ask you, it's a two-sided coin question. I'm going to ask you, are there any traits in your experience, right off the top of your head, any traits or habits that most of the very best leaders exhibit? And then, of course, the flip side to that coin is, how about the not so good leaders? Are there any traits and habits that most of the worst or the least effective also exhibit. So let's start with traits and habits of the very best leaders you've worked with, observed, mentored, coached, been mentored by.
Mm-hmm. The first, as you were asking that question, what came to my heart were a couple of people immediately. Mary Jo Kovacs was the vice president of sales at Pearson. And she's still my friend. She's an excellent leader. And what I remember about her is she genuinely did care more about her team and the people on her team. I'm getting goosebumps as I'm saying this, than she cared about rising up in the company. She rose up in the company, but she rose up in the company because she cared. She genuinely cared. And then I also think about Hiram Smith, who hired me to be a senior consultant for what was then Franklin Quest, became FranklinCovey. And Mike, I was young, I was green, I did not have confidence in myself, but he saw in me things I didn't see in myself. And he and the leadership team of Franklin Quest, within FranklinCovey, they brought out the best in me. So these two themes are the best leaders truly do care more about their people than they do their own personal interest. And they genuinely want to help develop their people to become their best selves. There's so much lip service around those words, but the truly great leaders that I've either had the opportunity to coach or be coached by, those are two themes that I've consistently seen come through. And what's interesting is those people did rise to the top, and they rose to the top out of those fine qualities of genuinely caring about their people more than themselves and genuinely being driven to bring out the best in others. And they're amazing people, and I'm thankful for them. On the flip side of that coin, the people who are not effective leaders, what I want to say, I have some strong feelings about this, is there are far too many persons, in my opinion, this is just my opinion for everyone listening, that have no business having a leadership title or a senior managerial role. It's the Peter principle. They were promoted beyond their level of skill set because a company didn't want to let them go. So if they had problems with this person at this level, they would promote them to the next level. Then problems there, how they would handle the problem is just keep promoting them up the food chain when they should have let them go. This is just my opinion, everyone. So, and so I have been exposed to many people who are in leadership roles that are driven by ego. They're arrogant. They do not care at all about their people. They do not care at all about people. They don't care about anything except what they can do to make the next move up the ladder or get the next outcome, whatever it is that they want. They are motivated solely for themselves, and they don't care who they have to hurt to get what they want. Now, I know this all sounds pretty blunt, but you asked the question. I have seen that in many, many people that I consulted with and coached. And now that I'm retired, I have the luxury of telling someone I won't work with them. I simply don't want to work with a person who lacks care for other people and lacks humility.
Yeah. Well, thank you for both sides of that coin. As I was listening to your, the good leader traits and habits, almost identical, really identical to what I've observed as well. Mm-hmm. I call it the leadership epiphany. The epiphany is better, better sooner than later. Mm-hmm. I didn't have it probably till my mid-30s. And the leadership epiphany that I describe is the day that you realize as a leader, you don't have to be the smartest guy in the room. Mm-hmm. Your people really don't expect you to know everything and have all the answers. saying things like, I don't know, what do you recommend?
Mm-hmm.
What do you propose? Are actually signs of strength, not weakness.
Exactly.
And the last one is when it's a really important one, and you've already mentioned it, is when you are prouder and feel better for the accomplishments of your people than in your own.
Yes, absolutely. Yep, that's an excellent, Mike. Thank you for saying that. That's an excellent one, because that immediately made me think of the same two people again, Mary Jo Kovacs and Hiram Smith.
Yeah.
That's the way they were. That is truly how they were. They were happier for their people when we were successful than they were for themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to go a little deeper on that. The thought, I want to get your thoughts on this. Those two people obviously cared.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point they may have literally told you they care, but before they ever, if they did literally state it, you knew it before they ever, you just knew it.
Mm-hmm.
So my belief is, and I want to hear your thoughts, Roben, is people know pretty quickly. Even the most inexperienced person can tell, I don't know if this guy's competent at his job. I don't know if he's got a good background, but he really does care about me. Like he really has my best interests at heart.
Yep.
And I also think people are pretty adept at spotting a phony. And if they don't spot the phony, it'll come out pretty quickly. And those bad leaders who have no business being leaders, my observation has been that a large percentage of them try to present a front that they care, but their actions very quickly, trash that notion. People know, well, he says this, but he really, at the end of the day, he's out for numero uno and nobody else. Do you agree that no matter how experienced a leader is, that actually caring for somebody and exuding that aura and that presence is something that their people can pick up on right away?
I do, and this goes back to intuitive intelligence. I believe that people are smarter than we give them credit for. We're smarter as people than we give ourselves credit for. And I believe that we intuitively know on a subconscious level when someone is genuine and cares about us and when they don't. So this is a perfect example of why it's so important, especially in the age of artificial intelligence, to sharpen the muscle of intuitive intelligence, because if you intuitively have a sense that this situation's not safe, this person's not safe, this person doesn't really care about me, if you intuitively have that, listen to that. And do whatever you do, meditate, pray, go for a walk, exercise, do whatever you do to get some space to really listen to that and do some critical thinking around that intuitive sense that you have, and choose to trust it. I've never had anyone tell me they regretted trusting their intuition. I've had hundreds, thousands of people tell me they've regretted not trusting their intuition. So I think, to your point, Mike, we do know that. I tell people in my audiences and one-on-one on a regular basis, people are smart. They're going to figure out if you're not for real. When I was a speaker on the stage for 5 days a week, 20 years in a row, every single time that I was in front of an audience, I would get 2 to 3, sometimes 5 people walk up to me and say, I want to do what you do for a living. And I could tell in 5 seconds flat if they had what it took, because it's a rigorous job and it takes a lot of stamina and it's not as easy as it looks, but you have got to be real. You have to truly care about people. You can't fake that for 20 years.
Yeah.
And so I could I got to the point where I could quickly discern which person's asking because they want all the accolades from being on stage versus they want to be on stage because they truly care about people and want to make a difference.
Yeah.
And I would tell them, people are smart. It's not going to work. If your heart's not right, if you're not there for the right motive, which is you lay yourself down and you put others before yourself when you're on that stage or when you're one-on-one, if your heart's not right, people can tell, and it will end up backfiring on you. So, yeah, I truly believe people are smart, and we know when someone is genuine and cares about us, and we know when they don't.
Yeah, I agree. Robert, our time is up, but I can't let you out of here without asking you the fantasy question that I ask every guest. So that question is, if you were able to bring back one leader from the past, spend a day with that person, who would you choose and why?
I love your fantasy question, and I had an immediate answer for it. When I read it, I have an immediate answer for it. It's Jesus. Because when I look at the way that Jesus walked on the earth with such humility, he got out of the way and truly gave sacrificially in his day-to-day interactions with people. And he mastered the art of giving guidance in a way that spoke the truth in love. Those traits, those characteristics, if I could be better at doing that, if we could all be better at doing that, I think the world would be a better place. And I just think it would be phenomenal to have the chance to actually meet the guy in person.
No, there's no doubt about it. If you can arrange that meeting, would you please invite me?
I will. You bet.
I'd love to do it. Well, listen, it's been an intriguing interview, and I've learned a lot. I don't know if you saw me. I've been taking notes the whole time. And I think these, the people in the audience, some of them, well, they're all going to be impressed. Some are going to want to reach out and contact you. So how do they do that? Where do people find your book? Can you give us that information, links, whatever? Where do you point them to?
You bet. The name of the book is Instinctology, and the website is instinctology.com. The book sells on Amazon, so you can go to instinctology.com and read and learn more about this movement and this book. You can order the book at Amazon, and if you would like to reach out to me directly, please do so through LinkedIn. And if you want to, can you flash my name up there? You can find Roben Graziadei on LinkedIn. Send me a message to connect, and then send me a message, and we can connect that way.
We'll do that. Well, again, Roben, it's been a great time. I appreciate it. I'm glad we finally made it happen. Appreciate your patience and sharing your wisdom and insights with us. And humbly and respectfully, I ask that you consider coming back and doing another one at some point.
I'd be honored. Thank you, Mike. I would love to do that. And truly, for your listeners, please reach out to me through LinkedIn. Roben Graziadei. I think Mike will put it up on the screen. There's a lot of consonants and vowels in there, but I'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you again, Roben. Be well.
You too. Thank you, Mike.
We hope you've enjoyed this podcast. Please subscribe, rate, review, and recommend to your friends. Please visit our website at fidelisleadership.com and sign up for our leadership newsletter. Until next time, remember the words of the ancient Greek philosopher Pericles.
What you leave behind is not what is engraved in stone monuments, but is woven in the lives of others.